This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We've got a special guest right off the bat for today's show. We're bringing on Trevor Lane. Really honored, delighted to have him on. Trevor does a great job covering the Los Angeles Lakers, senior writer for Laker Nation. You can follow him on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. I highly suggest it. A lot of great content, a lot of great work, covers the Lakers well. Go and give him a follow. So, Trevor, happy to have you on, man, and let's jump right into it here. I want to start with this, okay? There is this overwhelming opinion and argument that the play-in game is a bad thing for the Lakers, and they really need to do all they can to avoid the play-in game. I'm on the opposite side of that. If you look at the way the standings are shaping up, and obviously things can change within 72 hours before the season ends, but if everything goes the way it looks like it's going, I don't find the play-in game as bad of a thing for a team like the Lakers in particular because of their experience. It would be different if it wasn't the Lakers, but with the Lakers, they're coming off a championship. They have the most experienced playoff player in the NBA in LeBron James for all the playoffs he's been in. I don't find the play-in game a problem for this type of team. Am I wrong to think that way? What are your thoughts on this team being in a play-in game? Are you worried, and should Lakers fans be worried about that?
No, I'm on your side. I would actually rather see them stick in the 7th spot rather than move up to 3, simply because, or I'm sorry, to 6, simply because that means it puts you into a matchup with the number 3 team, which right now is the Clippers. Mm-hmm. I would rather see the Phoenix Suns, just matchup wise. I think the Lakers are a better matchup against the Suns than the Clippers are. So if you stay in the 7th seed, obviously the downside is you have to go through the play-in tournament, and it means you're either going to get the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors, who play each other coming up. So that's going to be an exciting one to keep an eye on. But you're going to get one of those two teams in the play-in tournament right off the bat. And both of those teams can be dangerous in their own right. Certainly Steph Curry can give you plenty of issues if he blows up for 50 while you're in for a tough night. But again, I like that outcome better than moving up to 6 and then right out of the gate, considering the spot the Lakers are in right now with so many guys coming off of injury, including LeBron James and Anthony Davis, to sort of be thrown into the deep end against a Clippers team that poses some matchup problems. So I'm on board with sticking at the 7th spot, even though it means going through the play-in tournament. But the 6th seed, if it happens, it happens. I've seen some people out there that are Blazers supporters saying they hope that they can fall to 7 because they're in the same boat. They don't want to see the Clippers in round 1, so they're rooting for a loss against the Denver Nuggets on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. It's so well said. It's, and it's not just an elimination game. That's what a lot of people need to understand. If they did lose because Curry went crazy, they do get another shot at it. Which is, and then agreed. So let me ask you this. I want to move on to, obviously, the injuries have really derailed the Lakers season as of late. LeBron and AD, they haven't been able to stay healthy. Schroeder's been out with COVID protocols. Where do you stand right now with this team and their continuity? So, just talking, you talk to the people, you cover this team very well. Do you feel that there is a reason for concern for Lakers fans that this team will need more time to gel because of the new additions of Andre Drummond and AD and Andre not being able to play together much, LeBron and Drummond not getting to dabble with the pick and roll game? instead of just jumping right into the playoffs. Is that something that's kind of a concern to you, or because of the experience, because of the championship, you're not so worried about that?
No, it's absolutely a concern. I mean, it's not an ideal situation. Look, it could be, end of the day, the Lakers have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. If they're at close to 100%, that might be what matters most. We don't know. But at this point, the continuity being disjointed at best has to be a bit of a concern, because one of this team's great strengths last season in winning a championship was their chemistry, their ability to really click on and off the court. And they just haven't had enough court time. I mean, look, they've practiced, I want to say it's 17 or 18 times all season. I'm talking about going way back to December. Because they've had this compressed schedule, they were dealing with a 71-day turnaround between winning a championship and starting back up again. So they've had this lack of continuity this season, and it's definitely something that can matter. I mean, I think there's a reason why they've been one of the worst teams in the NBA when it comes to turnovers, and that's something that's got to get fixed come playoff time. Those mistakes can really compound and hurt you in the playoffs. So it's not going to be easy for the Lakers to get this done, but they've got the talent to do it if everybody is healthy.
Trevor Lane, senior writer of Laker Nation, here with us on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Give him a follow on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. And so, Trevor, I want to look at the team as a whole that Rob Pelinka built. You know, take injuries aside, we saw how good this team was in the beginning of the year, even when AD was out, and it was just LeBron holding it down. When you look at the team, and let's put injuries aside and say that everyone is healthy, which hopefully they will be, do you see a spot in this team that you say that this worries me in terms of a weakness? You know, is there something, even when everyone is healthy, that you're looking at and saying, this team needs to get more out of this position, or this team needs to do more on this end of the court to win a championship? What is on your mind when you're looking at the way the team's constructed with everyone being healthy?
Yeah, I think the biggest issues right now are the turnovers. Dennis Schroeder, I call him an optimistic passer. Sometimes he throws passes that are just, he's hoping that somebody pops free and he throws the ball to that area, and it doesn't happen all the time. And so you can get live ball turnovers that way. That's been a concern. And then the three-point shooting. They came out of the gates red hot from three. They were one of the best teams shooting, and then completely fell off a cliff. I mean, just straight down to the point where they were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA. Couldn't hit anything. I do believe they're going to settle somewhere in middle of the pack. But in the current NBA, if you are not hitting threes, it can be really tough when you're going up against an opponent who does hit threes. And the Lakers do a pretty good job defending the three-point line, but that can be the great equalizer. And so those two areas are the biggest areas that I'm looking at on this team. It's the three-point margin. Can they stay close with some of these teams in terms of three-point makes and percentage efficiency? And what are they going to do about the turnovers? Can they limit those and stop teams from getting out in transition? If you're not going to be a very efficient team shooting the basketball and you turn the ball over a lot, which means you're giving up shooting opportunities, well, it's really hard to win basketball games. So I think those are going to be two really key indicators for the Lakers moving forward.
You're listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast with conference in particular. Is there a team out there that you look at and you say, this team is a team that if they get matched up with the Lakers, it could become a very interesting series in particular? Is it the Clippers? Is it the Suns or the Jazz in the first round, the Nuggets? What team are you looking at that's saying if somehow the Lakers can avoid this team, it would be better for a championship run?
No, it's definitely the Clippers. When I look at these teams, the playoff experience for the Suns is lacking. I know they've got Chris Paul, but other than that, they're lacking some guys who have a lot of playoff experience. So that's a team who could falter come playoff time. The Utah Jazz have a history of kind of coming up short in the playoffs, where they do some great things during the regular season, but once teams really get to lock into them and what their schemes are, then they tend to fall short. So that's another team that doesn't worry me quite as much. But if you look at the Clippers, and again, it's not just the personnel, but also the style of players that they've got, I think it can be a tough matchup. And that's why I would rather the Lakers see them later on in the playoffs, once hopefully the Lakers have their legs under them a little bit, because they are going to be just coming back from injury. So I think that's the other team, which is interesting because, we heading into this season, we said it's in the West, it's the Lakers and everybody else, or the Lakers and the Clippers and everybody else. And then as the season went on, these other teams started playing really well. And I'm talking about Utah, Denver, Portland had some moments in there. And then, of course, the Phoenix Suns. And so we started looking at the West as, well, maybe it's really a 5-team race in the West. But now that it's playoff time and now that it's kind of do or die situation, Donovan Mitchell's dealt with some injuries. I think a lot of people are kind of reverting back to where we were heading into the season with the feeling that it's Lakers, Clippers, and then everybody else, with, of course, the caveat that the Lakers have been very, very injured this season. And so it's something where they have to get healthy in order to be that. But I do think there is a tier break between the Lakers and the Clippers and the other teams in the Western Conference.
And the Clippers are definitely going to be motivated after what happened last season. There is no doubt about that. I want to switch over to the Eastern Conference here real quick. To you, are the Nets the clear team to beat in your opinion? I mean, obviously they're ridiculously stacked. You have James Harden, KD, Kyrie. That's another team, obviously, that they need to be healthy, though. It's hard for them to not be the favorites when you have those three guys out on the court, but Philly has been phenomenal this season. They have a guy, Joel Embiid, who can cause some serious matchup nightmares for a team like the Nets that's lacking it down low in terms of their big men. You've got the Bucks, who have played much better than what we saw come postseason time last year. Do you give any stock in one of those teams knocking off the Nets, or is this clearly Brooklyn's conference to lose?
You know what? I actually think and I know they're the favorites and everything, and I think they're the favorites to win the NBA championship according to Vegas. I don't think the Nets are going to get there. Okay. I don't think they're going to get through the Eastern Conference, and I can see where I could very easily be wrong here. But I think the issue with the Nets is their defense, right? They are an incredible offense, and it's possible that their offense is just so good and they have so much talent when they get KD and Kyrie and Harden out there on the floor together that the defense doesn't matter. That's possible, right? They don't even need an offensive system because they have three guys where you can throw them the ball and they can create a basket out of nothing at high efficiency. So they've got that luxury. But their defense has been such a mess that I think come playoff time, that's going to matter. And you've got two teams who are pretty good defensively in the Bucks and the 76ers. I mean, the 76ers are great defensively, that I think that if you can kind of slow them down and get them into a drag down fight of a game, the Nets are very beatable. And, again, it's possible the star power just overcomes that, and their ability to score just means more than their defensive issues. But in the playoffs, the old refrain, we've heard it time and time again, defense wins championships. I just think that's going to catch up to them.
And we saw that last year. I mean, the defense for the Lakers was phenomenal under Frank Vogel, and that was a big reason why they ended up winning that championship. That's a great point by you. I'll get you out of here on this last question here. Trevor Lane joining us on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Really appreciate your time, man. It's so interesting, man. I'm a huge LeBron fan. I love everything he's done. He comes to Los Angeles, and there was a lot of people, I think, that actually thought he was coming here to really kick off his second act in terms of what he's going to do after he retires in basketball. He's got movies coming out. He's got a big production company. People weren't sure if it was all for basketball reasons. But right away, he showed his commitment to Laker Nation. I mean, he won them a championship. He ended that dreadful playoff drought that was obviously something Laker fans and Laker organization wanted to end. So that alone meant a ton for the organization and the fans. So my question to you is, what would it mean for LeBron James in terms of his legacy as a Laker? Not specifically in his entire basketball career, but in terms of just looking at it, where he could stand within this organization that is filled with so many iconic players. How would Laker fans, in your mind, feel about LeBron in the realm of the rest of the Laker greats if he was able to bring home 2 championships back-to-back for this city and this organization?
I think it would absolutely matter. I mean, look, he's not touching Kobe. He's not. As much as people want to do the LeBron-Kobe comparisons and all that kind of stuff, in terms of Lakers fans, he's not touching Kobe. And you can absolutely make the argument that overall NBA, right, LeBron has been better than Kobe and everything. But But just in terms of what he's meant to Los Angeles, you're not touching Kobe. I don't think anybody's touching Kobe. No, he's not getting the magic level in terms of what he meant for the franchise because he just hasn't been here long enough, right? If LeBron spent his whole decade in Los Angeles, then we're talking about a different story. But I think you bring home this second championship, it means a lot. Obviously bringing home one, especially what they went through last year with losing Kobe and everything else that was happening. That obviously was very special, and Lakers fans will never forget that. Lakers Nation will always remember that year. But to bring home a second one, particularly to pass the Boston Celtics and bring home number 18, I think that would go a long way towards cementing his status, towards being one of the greats. Again, you're not going to look at him as the all-time greatest Laker or anything like that, but I do think that he would be up there in a very, very select group if he's able to do that. So, that would be great to see, particularly because of where the organization sits currently with the 17 championships. To move up to number 18 and pass the Celtics, I think that would be very, very special.
Yeah, it would be phenomenal to see, and so well said. Kobe Bryant is in a whole other stratosphere of his own in terms of what he's done for Laker Nation. But what LeBron, if LeBron could bring home two, it would be very special sight. There's no doubt about that. Trevor Lane, thank you so much for joining us. Follow him on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Thank you, man. Have a great day, and we'll see how playoffs get going next week.
Hey, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Trevor Lane. Really, really fantastic job by him. Just going through what we possibly might see with the Los Angeles Lakers. Do fans want the Lakers to actually get that number 7 seed, right? That's kind of, everyone thinks of it as, and he agreed with my premise. I told you guys the other day, and I asked him that same question. I don't think it's a bad thing for the Lakers to get the 7 seed. And I wanted to see if he agreed with that, and he clearly did. And that's just because the matchup is better. And that's something that I think is pretty interesting that he agrees with me on that. Even though a lot of people think, you don't want to be in a one-game playoff scenario, but you trust LeBron James. You trust Anthony Davis. You trust these defending champions, which is what they are, that they can win a one-game play-in. And then they can get a great matchup from there against a Phoenix Suns team or possibly a Utah Jazz team. So really great stuff there by Trevor Lane. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we are going to dive into more of what we just heard from Trevor. I'll kind of break some of that interview down. We're going to look at the updated standings now that it's Sunday night and this is the last night of the regular season. Going to look at some situations, and then we're also going to switch things over to the NFL and talk some Tim Tebow. A lot of heat coming out about the Jacksonville Jaguars possibly signing Tim Tebow. I'm in the minority on this, and you guys are going to want to hear my take. We'll be right back. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. We'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Are the defending champions headed to the play-in tournament? If so, are they in trouble? Lakers fans, I know there's a lot out you. I know there's millions of you out there. How are we feeling on this Sunday? Monday, Tuesday, whenever you're listening to the show. Are you guys worried as we come down the final stretch of this short 72-game NBA regular season? There's not much time left. Can they right the ship? Are you worried about the play-in tournament, or are you just worried about them getting healthy? This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon. I hope everyone's having a lovely day. It's beautiful here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wherever you are, however you're listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're having fun. Hope you're outside doing your thing, doing some yard work while you listen to us. And what a last week of the NBA regular season it's going to be. You know, we just talked about in the first segment how if I'm a Lakers fan, I'm really not worried. I'm not worried about a play-in game. I'm sorry. Is that wrong? I'm not worried. This is no disrespect to the San Antonio Spurs. This is no disrespect to the Memphis Grizzlies and Ja Morant. This is no disrespect to Steph Curry, who's been absolutely unbelievable this season, and the Warriors. This is all about the team that the Lakers are. Ladies and gentlemen, this team was one game out of first place. This team was one game out of having the best record in the entire NBA 3 months into the season. Then LeBron James went down and everything went down from there. But this team was playing fine. They were playing fine even without Anthony Davis. If this team is healthy, I'm not worried about a play-in tournament. I'm not worried. Maybe they lose the first game. I'd be shocked. But if they do, you think they're going to then lose the second one too? I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And being in the play-in tournament might actually not be the worst thing for this team. It builds urgency, and it builds urgency quick. One thing that we've seen with LeBron James teams, sometimes they like to start a little slow in the playoffs. Sometimes they know that they're so good, they've got LeBron James, they can ramp it up at any time. This might bring in a little bit more urgency a little quicker than we usually see. Also, it could give them a path to the finals that is easier if they say we're the 6th seed. If they end up the 6th seed, they're going to be playing the Los Angeles Clippers in the first round. I don't know if you want that matchup. Coming back from trying to get healthy, and the first 7-game series you have to go to is against the Clippers, your hometown quote-unquote rival, even though it's not a rival because the Lakers are the Lakers and the Clippers are frankly the Clippers. But still, that's a very talented team over there in LA. That's an aggressive team. They've got Rondo now. That is going to be a very tough first matchup for a team that's trying to get their legs under them. But if you play a team like Phoenix, who is young and very talented, but also they don't have the playoff experience. They've never been in this situation. They're new to this. They're excited that they're even there. They're excited that they had such a great season. Now, of course, they've had such a good season that the expectations are bigger, and they believe that they can do more. And look, they're good enough to beat the Lakers. But that's a team where you can get your legs out from under you. You can really get, who cares if you go to a 6-game, 7-game series with them? It's a series that you feel more comfortable in rather than jumping right into the pool of sharks with the Clippers. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. I'm not worried about the play-in tournament for the Los Angeles Lakers. How do you guys feel? At Kayvon_sports. Let me know your thoughts. Are you guys worried? Lakers fans out there, do you think if the Lakers are in the play-in tournament, they should be worried? Do you think they really have a legit chance of being bounced in the play-in tournament? I don't. And then not even Lakers fans. Who do you want to see them play? If you could pick and you could set the Lakers up with a play-in tournament game, who are you picking? Are you picking the Warriors? You picking the Grizzlies? You picking the Spurs? And who are you picking in the first round? Are you picking Utah? Or would you rather see an LA versus LA matchup in the first round? Or are you like me and you want to see that in the conference finals? Let me know your thoughts. I'll respond to them as always. Now, those that have been listening to me for a long time, look, they know I'm a LeBron guy. LeBron James, I'm a huge LeBron fan. I've backed him up on many occasions. I think he's the best player ever. I think he's the greatest basketball player to ever play. But I did not like what he said last week. I got to push back on this. He said last week how whoever came up with the play-in tournament needs to be fired. The play-in tournament is a must-watch event. Certainly if you're a diehard NBA fan, but even if you're a casual fan. Think about it. Have we ever talked/cared about the end of the regular season as much as we have this year? Not at all. Every game matters down the stretch. They are all must-watch. We're talking about a Friday night, a week before the season ends, a Portland-Los Angeles matchup that has so many stakes and marbles on the line. Why? It's not even the playoffs yet. Because of the play-in tournament. And getting a Lakers, Davis, LeBron, a winner-take-all against Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Warriors. I'm there. I am there. Who is not interested in that game? That game alone has more urgency than the Lakers vs. Suns Game 1. It has more urgency than Lakers Jazz Game 1. Because there's a chance, well, not a chance, whoever loses that game is going to be playing for their season the next time out. I would put money on the line that that game gets more ratings than the Lakers-Suns Game 1, if that's or the Lakers-Jazz Game 1, or Clippers-Mavericks Game 1, if that's a series. That the play-in tournament will get more ratings than the first-round series. Because it's March Madness. It's single elimination. It's college basketball, but with NBA players. What am I missing here? I don't have a problem with this play-in tournament whatsoever. What am I missing? GSMC Sports Podcast. Let me know your thoughts. At Kayvon_sports. Let me know your thoughts about the play-in tournament. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think they should change it up? Do you think 10 teams is the right amount of teams? Now, look, I get it. I get why the NBA is doing it. It's a money grab. It's just like why the NHL does 3-on-3 overtimes. It's exciting. It's really exciting, right? You get 3-on-3 overtimes. It's offense. It's just back and forth. It's why the MLB puts a runner on second. Trying to bring some more flair to the game. They're trying to bring some excitement to the game. And also, it makes more money. I get that. That's the day and age we're in, right? But I'm all for it. It's a 72-game regular season. We're back to 82 games next year. And it just provides something a little different. I think the first round is too long as it is anyways. You almost never see in professional basketball a one-game, do or die. And if you do, it's because there is kind of a marathon. There's a marathon going there in the regular season. And certainly in a best-of-7 series. It's something new. It's different. The Lakers are hurt by the fact that LeBron got hurt 2 months ago. That Davis got hurt a couple months ago. And I don't see anything wrong with that. That's just the way that's the way life is, essentially. And if you can't stay in the top 6, then you play for your lives a couple times. And again, I just want to make sure people are aware of what the format is with this play-in tournament. If you're the 7 or 8 seed, and that's how things finish, you have 2 chances. So that's why I like it. It'd be different if it was you're the 7th seed, but now it's a winner and you're a single elimination game, you're done. No, it's, hey, you play once, and if you lose, your season's not over yet. No, you get one more chance. Then you go play the winner of the 7-8 seed goes and plays the winner of the 9-10 game. And right now, that's Memphis, San Antonio. Who really thinks those are actual playoff teams at this point? Nice job by those teams this year. They're doing a good job. Coach Pop is still doing what he does as Coach Pop, legendary coach. And Memphis is on the come up with John Morant. But they're not that great of teams. So if the Lakers were to lose to Golden State and then lose to Memphis or San Antonio, well, then they would deserve to miss the playoffs, the real playoffs. I just don't expect that to happen. So to me, that's not the big story. It just makes it interesting to have the play-in tournament. I mean, how many years have we talked about how the first round is always bogus, right? How the first round, for most of these series, the 1 versus 8, it's always a sweep. It's always 4-0 or 4-1. The 2 versus 7, it's always 4-0 or 4-1. Very rarely do you have a really interesting 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7 type matchup. But this gives you a chance to possibly get a tougher team in there, or to possibly let those teams actually fight for a spot to play the 1 seed, to play the 2 seed. And that's kind of what I find so interesting about it. And that's why I think it's okay for the 9 and 10 to have a single elimination game, because they were not even in the playoffs anyways. So you're just giving them a chance to get one more. If you can get hot, win 2 games in a row, well then guess what? You're in. Now, one thing I wonder about the Lakers, and I actually would put Brooklyn Nets into this mix as well, because they're kind of in the same similar category. You have 2 teams that are the 2 title favorites. Brooklyn and Los Angeles Lakers are the 2 top favorites by Vegas to win the whole thing. And they're both really relying on a whole heck of a lot to fall directly into place right as the postseason is beginning. With the Nets, that's James Harden, who's been out for a couple months now with the hamstring injury. And with the Lakers, that is Anthony Davis. But more importantly, it's LeBron James. And the Lakers aren't as deep as Brooklyn is. Brooklyn feels like they could just outscore a lot of people, especially early on in the playoffs. If they've got any 2 of Durant, Harden, Kyrie, they'll be okay for a while in these. Honestly, Durant and Kyrie should be able to win the first and second series in the East. And then maybe going up against a Philly or going up against a Milwaukee is when you might need Harden, even though I find that a bit ridiculous. Like, you have 2 of the best top 5 players in the world in Durant and Kyrie. If you can't beat who you need to beat, that's on you, right? And I know I'm going off a little bit, but I think a lot of people share that same sentiment when it comes to Brooklyn. They're not a very liked team because of how much they've stacked the decks. The Lakers in the West, though, they need Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They're not deep enough to survive without these guys. I actually would go so far to say, and people are going to say I'm crazy, I think they need Dennis Schroeder as well. Dennis Schroeder's been out for 10 to 14 days, or he's going to be out for 10 to 14 days because of COVID protocols. Now, he should be back in time for the play-in tournament, but I would suggest if they don't have Dennis Schroeder for the first round against the Suns or Jazz, they're in trouble because he's their second greatest facilitator. See, that's the thing with the Lakers. The Lakers will be the best or the second best defensive team in the entire league. That's what they've been all season. Even with LeBron and AD out, they have still been one of the best defensive teams in the league because that's their coach Frank Vogel's calling card. And that's what they do well. But they need offense. And LeBron's going to bring some great offense, and AD's going to bring some great offense. But they need more than that too. And Dennis Schroeder is their Rondo this year. You remember how impactful Rondo was in the postseason in the bubble? When LeBron needed a rest, Rondo ran the court. When AD needed a rest, Rondo was running the court. That's what Dennis Schroeder is their Rondo this year. And I know they've got Alex Caruso, they've got Talen Horton-Tucker. Good players, not good enough to take you far in the playoffs. Not good enough at all to take you far in the playoffs. They're going to need not just LeBron and AD, but they're going to need LeBron, AD, and Schroeder if they want to make a deep playoff run. Look, LeBron and AD together, they're good enough to get them out of the play-in tournament and maybe even good enough to win some games in the first round. But the problem is their first round matchup isn't going to be a cakewalk like usual. they're going to be playing one of the best teams in the entire league, whether it's the Suns or the Jazz. So, again, I think they'll be fine. Actually, I know they'll be fine for the play-in tournament as long as they have LeBron and AD. But come that first round, I think they need everyone healthy. I think they need their full depth of players to get going. Brooklyn, on the other hand, I don't believe they need James Harden. I think at this point, James Harden is a luxury. Now, to beat a fully healthy Los Angeles Lakers team in the finals, yeah, they probably will, even though I still find that ridiculously stacking the deck, but that's the team they have. And the Brooklyn Nets believe that Harden's going to be ready to go for the playoffs. We'll see if that's the case. We'll see how good of shape he'll be in. And as of right now, Durant's healthy, which is great, and so is Kyrie. So the Nets are definitely trending upwards in terms of their health, while the Lakers are still a question mark. There's no doubt about that. We believe that everyone's going to be healthy and ready to go starting on Tuesday against the Knicks, but we're really not going to know until we see it. So I'm not worried about the Lakers in the play-in game, but if they're not healthy, you can scratch off everything I just said. They've got no shot at even winning a single game if LeBron James and Anthony Davis aren't healthy. LeBron can win in the play-in tournament. LeBron's not going to be able to beat the Suns or the Jazz by himself without AD, and vice versa. I don't even know if Anthony Davis can win the play-in tournament without LeBron, but he sure as heck not be able to win the first round against Suns or Jazz without LeBron James. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Still thinking of the Lakers. The Green Bay Packers are in a situation now where I wouldn't say the clock is ticking, but a decision has to be made. And the decision is not on Aaron Rodgers. That decision is on Jordan Love. I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by that right after this. Don't go anywhere. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. We'll be right back after this.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the newest episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. A big thank you to all of you out there that are taking some time to listen to us today. Forgive me, my voice is definitely a little bit off. I had a really long but fun weekend. I went to Cincinnati, visited my longtime friend Brendan Burns. I also obviously cheered a lot for the draft. I love that the Falcons got Kyle Pitts. I also really liked a lot of other selections that the Falcons did, as well as some other teams. And me and my buddy Brendan, we went to a Reds-Cubs game in Cincinnati, so had a lot of talking, a lot of drinking, a lot of having fun there. That turned out to be I would say a swollen voice is probably the way to go there, but definitely just starting to get things back here. Had a lot of tea, drank some honey. Tea and honey mixed together always is a job well done when you have a sore throat. So hopefully it doesn't sound as bad today because it was way, way worse a couple days ago. And I was really just sitting there praying that by the time Wednesday comes, this voice will be somewhat bearable for me to do this show, and hopefully it is for you guys. But thanks so much for tuning in. So much on deck. We're going to get right to it. We're going to start off with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Look, I know it's crazy. I know people are talking about it all over, but I haven't had my chance to say what I want to say about Aaron Rodgers and the situation. We'll dive into LeBron and what he's been saying, what's going on with him. Is he even going to play again? I mean, that's something people are not even talking about. I don't even know if he's going to play again this season. People are talking about, oh, he'll come back for the playoffs. I'm not so sure of that. I'm really not. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. And I'm also going to give out not some draft grades, because the whole thing on draft grades, you don't know how these draft picks are going to do until years down the road. I mean, sometimes some of them, they'll show us right away. Others, it's going to be something that we have to look. So I understand it. I get why people do draft grades. I get the whole clickbait, and it brings attention, and teams want to see how their team did. Fans want to see how their team did. But I'm just going to give you guys kind of some winners of the draft. People that I really liked what they did. Some players, some teams that got some players that I feel like can make an impact on their team right away. So we'll go through that. But let's start things off first with Aaron Rodgers. Look, let's dive into it this way. There are so many ways to look at how this Aaron Rodgers situation started, right? How did we get here in the first place? When something like this happened, when something of this magnitude happens, it's very rarely a one-way street. In other words, there are multiple reasons behind it, behind how we get to a point of wanting out of an organization that drafted you, that you won a Super Bowl with. How do we get to that point, right? It's not just a one-sided, it's not just a one-way street or a one-topic street that gets you to that point. Whoever's saying that, they're lying. There's much more that goes into a relationship like this for it to break down the way it has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down from all sides. All right, I'm going to break it down from every side of this relationship, and we're going to try and come to a bottom line here of what the hell is going on in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. First of all, I want to start by this, and I know most people have mentioned this, but I sometimes feel like it's something that's not talked about that I do think needs to be discussed, and that's from the Packers. That the Packers organization, they don't have an owner, right? So the only NFL franchise in the NFL that does not have an owner is the Green Bay Packers. Don't make a mistake. That is a very big part to this story. So they are a rudderless organization at this point, right? Mark Murphy is the de facto owner, and from what everyone says, he's a really smart, well-educated, nice guy. I personally don't know him, but a lot of people talk highly of him. But supposedly, he's not the biggest people person out there. He's not a big people person. And again, he is technically the de facto owner because the Packers don't have an owner. So the structure in the Green Bay Packers organization goes like this. Mark Murphy's at the top. He's the president. And then Brian Kuntakist, I'm going to get that wrong all night, so just forgive me. Brian Kuntakist is the general manager. And then below him, Matt LaFleur is the head coach. So that is their structure right there, all right? You got Murphy, you got Kuntakis, and you got LaFleur as right there. So their structure does not facilitate the personality that is in the center. And that is Aaron Rodgers. So Rodgers essentially does not have an owner, right? It's not like the situation in New England with the Kraft family, where Tom Brady, in his 20 years in New England, would literally call Robert Kraft his second father. I mean, he used that phrase many times. They were that close. They still are that close. And honestly, I truly believe Brady would have left the organization much sooner than he did if it wasn't for the ardent relationship that Brady and Kraft have. Rodgers doesn't have that in Green Bay. Rodgers doesn't have an owner that can walk through the franchise at any minute and say, hey, Rodgers, whatever you want. What do you want me to do for you to stay? Rodgers doesn't have that. So while everyone says that this is a mismanagement situation by the Packers, I disagree. Do I think the drafting of Jordan Love might have something to do with it? Yeah, of course. It's normal. I get that. Of course Rodgers is upset about that. But this is a human being situation here. This isn't a mismanagement situation. The mismanagement is the cherry on top. The mismanagement is a part of it. This is a human being situation. There is nobody to coddle Aaron Rodgers. There's nobody to make sure that he understands that he is a very special person and that this organization is grateful for them. And that there is nobody that can take his side over everyone else, and the ultimatum is you're fired because you mistreated Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's essentially what owners can do and have done with their star players, right? That's not Green Bay. So I felt it was needed to explain what Green Bay is and how they are so different from other organizations. That's important right there. So now, you know that. Now let's add this into the mix. Let's add where Rodgers is in his life right now into the mix. All right? So when you add that into the mix, you get the answer of just married a beautiful actress that loves spending time in LA and California, not Green Bay. No hate to Green Bay. Beautiful place. She's an actress. You enter new possibilities for Aaron Rodgers with Jeopardy, crushing it as the host for 2 weeks on Jeopardy. And then you also enter the mix a new phase in life. At 37 years old, you change. We all change. This isn't just Aaron Rodgers. This is all of us. Again, a human being situation. You change in life. And now we go back to the Packers. And there isn't that structure starting from the top. And real quick, to wind back 1 second. Haven't we all been in a relationship where we're like, man, I would live in this city for the rest of my life, or I would do this for the rest of my life. Then you go meet your special someone, that girl or that boy, and they're talking about how they're going to move here, and you hop on that to move with them in a second. You change in your life. You adapt. You meet new people. New things happen. So when you add all that in, and then we go back to the Packers, and there isn't that structure starting from the top that is facilitating Rodgers being happy and getting through the rough spots that are his egos being bruised, and him feeling, what would you say, underappreciated. They don't have that, okay? But now, let's dive into this a little deeper. So you put all that into it's like a big mixing bowl here that we're adding. But now let's dive into this where what everyone else is saying. The majority of people are saying that this is all about the drafting of Jordan Love, right? This is all about the drafting of Jordan Love. Because a lot of people believe that once that happened, it was game over. And I'm having a really hard time believing that. I personally am having a hard time believing that. I don't believe that drafting one player is making Aaron Rodgers one of the greatest throwers of the football ever that upset. Now, should he be upset that they drafted a quarterback? Of course he should be. He has every right to be. And if we all are being honest here, we all would be pretty upset if that happened to us too. We all would be. Because he took the team to a 13-3 season and the NFC Championship game. And then not only did they draft Jordan Love, but they traded up to draft him when they clearly had other needs on the board that they could have fixed. They didn't just draft him. They traded up to draft him. So yeah, he had every single right to be mad about that. It would be much different if they were a 7-9 team or a 9-7 team and they were barely making the playoffs and he didn't look as good as he used to be and you could tell the decline was coming and they said, you know what? We still like you, Rodgers, but we need a plan for the future. We would all understand that. That's sports, right? That's happened to how many superstars in sports before? In football alone. Countless. So when you look at it in terms of Jordan Love being the whole reason of all of this, I'm sorry, I just can't wrap my head around that. Do I think it's part of the reason? Yes, of course. And also, this is another thing about Jordan Love here, okay? If Jordan Love, and Rodgers knows this, by the way, okay? Rodgers is a very smart guy. He is a calculated person. You know, he thinks about all of this. You think that the information about him wanting out of Green Bay just got leaked, quote unquote, on draft night on purpose? Come on. Rodgers had that leaked at the exact moment that he wanted it to be leaked. Rodgers is not stupid. And he knows that if Jordan Love was a good quarterback, was as good of a quarterback that he should be, and I'm not, because we don't know yet, but if he was as good of a quarterback that he should be at this point, and listen, just because he didn't go in the top 10 in the first round, he was still drafted in the first round. He was still traded up for, okay? He should be good at this point. Should he be the best quarterback he's going to be? No, of course not. But he should be showing a lot of glimpses of, whoa, this guy can play. If Jordan Love was showing even a little glimpse, if he was just showing glimpses during practice, during scrimmages, that he was a first-round talent at this moment and he can clearly ball, then we wouldn't even have a problem here. This wouldn't even be that big of a deal for the Green Bay Packers if that was the case. They would look and say, we drafted this guy. Well, let's use him. Especially if we can get the amount of assets back that we can get for Aaron Rodgers. The problem is, though, the pick was not good. It was not a good pick. Right now, Jordan Love is not good. Will he be good in the future? We have no clue. Maybe he will be. But right now, he is a clear project. He wasn't even the second string quarterback last year. And Aaron Rodgers knows this. Guys, Aaron Rodgers plays with him every day. He sees him in practice every day. He sees him in scrimmages every day. When Brett Favre was playing with Rodgers, Brett Favre saw what Rodgers had. Rodgers is not seeing that. So Rodgers is looking at this and saying, not only am I still really good, but this guy that they drafted without even talking to me about, he's not. He is not. So how about I leave and all of these fans get to see the decision the Packers really made? Of course, that type of thinking is part of this. You have to believe that Aaron Rodgers is having that type of thought. But it's not all of it. It's not the main reason why Rodgers is doing this. Again, back to this is a human moment. Rodgers has other interest. Do you want to put the Jordan Love thing as the cherry on top? Yeah, why not? Because it makes it juicy. It makes it fun to talk about. It's much more fun saying they drafted this 19-year-old kid to replace Rodgers. And you know what? Rodgers feels humiliated, so he wants to humiliate them back. Of course that's in his head. But it's not the whole reason. He doesn't force out of a relationship this big. This isn't just like a one-night stand relationship, guys. This is a long-term relationship where they had kids and they had the championships and memories together for many, many years. And then you know what happened? The Green Bay Packers said, we're going to go on we're going to go on a business conference. And on that business conference, we got lusted into this person named Jordan Love. And we decided to draft him. And we drafted him without even telling our spouse. So, yeah, of course, Rodgers, our spouse, is pissed off about it. Of course he is, right? And not to make it even worse, that person that they drafted, that person that they quote-unquote cheated with, is still living in the house. He's still in the organization every single day. So, of course, Rodgers is looking at this like, they drafted this guy. Let's let him play him. Let's let the Packers play him and see how he does. Get me out of here. And then he gets to show how good he really is, how much he meant to this franchise, and how much the pick was a bad pick. You add all those together, that's a huge part of it. But again, it's not the whole piece of it. It's a human moment. You cannot make it all about that. He's married to an actress now. He killed it while hosting Jeopardy. And maybe he just doesn't love football as much anymore. Is that a crime? No, it's not. Look, people like to move on in life. They just do. They fizzle out. They're tired. They get tired of things. They want to move on to something new. Something that they actually don't know how great it's going to be, but it looks fancy. It looks nice. They might regret it when they get there, but they want to try it. Okay? Relationships. Sometimes they look amazing. And then the next thing you know, they end. Jobs. You get super excited when you get that new job in Chicago. 2 years later, you're kind of tired of living there now. Things like that happen. Aaron Rodgers just married a beautiful wife who is a movie star who likes to live in California. So he sees his window. He's saying, look, if I can get myself to another team, then great. I'd love to do that. But if not, well, my wife doesn't like it here. I'm good at other things. I do have a Super Bowl already. I can pull the retirement card because I'm not coming back here. I can pull the retirement card and see where that lands me because I'm honestly not too mad if it really lands me into retirement. There's more to it than just the Jordan Love drafting. It's part of it. I'm not going to be naive here. I'm not going to tell you guys that it's not part of it. But there's much more to it than that. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, finish up on the Rodgers talk here, move into draft winners, which teams are sitting real pretty as we start to look forward to week 1 a couple months from now. We'll be right back. I am Kayvon Izami, and you are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the GSMC Sports Podcast, the final segment of this beautiful Sunday show. The weather is amazing here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I hope it's the same for you guys wherever you are, however you're listening. I know we have some great listeners all around the U.S. Hopefully, I think maybe some listeners, in other parts of the world too. I hope your weather, your day, your Sunday, your Monday, whenever you're listening to this show, is a beautiful, beautiful day. And I really do appreciate you guys tuning into us. Look, lot of interesting talk here, right? Lot going on in the sports world. As I said earlier in the show, it's one of my favorite times of the year, if not my favorite. You got horse racing, which what's going on with horse racing? That's something I really do want to take my time and do a whole segment on that I might do in the near future. There's just so much going on in sports right now that I haven't had time to do that, but it's sad and it's wrong what is happening in horse racing and what has been happening in horse racing for a long time, and a lot of heads have just been turned, but maybe with what happened at Churchill Downs at Kentucky Derby, things will start to change, and we'll see. But that's something I'll touch on in a later show. But you think about it, we do have the Triple Crown races, we have NHL, we have NBA, and we have football starting, like rookie camps are starting back up. Then we'll have OTAs. There's a lot going on in the sports world. MLB is really underway now. We're seeing a lot of teams separate themselves. We're seeing teams, the ones that started out good that we thought were flukes, they're starting to kind of push back. The Yankees are starting to roll. So a lot of good things going on in the sports world. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. So I want to touch on the NBA here. Now, this can be confusing, so follow along. Most of you that follow the sport hardcore, you guys already know this, right? So this is the NBA. I love the play-in tournament, okay? I know LeBron said that, a couple weeks ago, whoever started the play-in tournament should be fired. And I don't think he actually meant that. I think he was just expressing his point and wanted to put some emphasis on it. I don't think he actually thinks whoever started this should be fired. But I actually disagree with LeBron on this. I think the play-in tournament is phenomenal. Look at this. The last 2 weeks of the season, all we have been doing is talking about random Wednesday night games and Saturday games against the Lakers versus the Pelicans, when usually we don't care about those games because we're just looking forward to the playoffs starting. And it's all about, okay, they're resting their players for the playoffs to start. But no, not with the play-in tournament. All of this is important. We're talking about games as the season runs down because these games are important. So think about it. Today is Sunday. This is the last day of the regular season. The play-in tournament starts Tuesday, right? So the play-in games start on Tuesday. This Sunday, right now, today, there are so many games that have already started or that are starting tonight that have implications still on seeding and whether teams are going to make the actual playoffs or the play-in playoffs tournament. So right now, the Warriors are smacking the Grizzlies. All right. Why is this game important? This game's important because whoever wins this game, which looks like it's going to be the Warriors. Now, the Grizzlies are making a comeback here. Actually, they're making a big comeback. The Warriors were just up like 20, and now it's 91-84, 7 minutes left in the game. So I do think the Warriors will hold on. The reason that's important is the winner of this game stays in the 8 seed, okay? Why is the 8 seed important? The 8 seed is important because the 7 versus 8 matchup, the winner of that game, they become the 7th seed in the playoffs, right? So win that game, you're in. If you lose that game, you're not out. You then will play the winner of the 9-10 matchup. So if the Warriors hang on and win, the Grizzlies will move to the 9 seed to play the Spurs. So the winner of the Grizzlies Spurs will then move on to play the loser of the 7 versus 8, which is all likelihood going to be the Lakers versus the Warriors. So why it's important to be in the 7 and 8 spot is because you get 2 cracks at it. right? It's not just single elimination. You get 2 chances. The 9-10 spot, it's one game, you lose, you're done. It's literally NCAA format, right? It's March Madness. You're in, you win, you get another chance, you move on to another day. You lose, you're packing your bags, you're traveling to Cancun, you're starting your whole summer vacations and all of that stuff, right? So why is that important for this game? If the Warriors get that 8 seed, they're most likely going to face the Lakers. That is a very tough matchup for them. So they want that 8 seed because if they do lose, they get a second crack at it. Which is why a couple of weeks ago on this very show, I told you guys, and I put my word on it, there's no chance the Lakers lose in the play-in tournament. There's no chance. Okay, let's say the first game, Curry plays out of his mind, drops 40 points, they beat the Lakers. Okay, then they would play the winner of Grizzlies Spurs. They're not losing both of those games back to back. They're just not. I'm telling you that right now. The Lakers will not lose unless AD and LeBron are injured and they don't play. The Lakers will not lose in the play-in tournament. But the Lakers still have a shot to make the actual playoffs. If they beat New Orleans tonight, and the NBA did such a good job, right? They scheduled the New Orleans-Lakers game and the Portland-Denver game all at the same time. So you ask, well, Kayvon, why did those 2 games, what do they have in common? Well, if Portland, who is the 6th seed right now, if they beat Denver, then they're in. They're in the 6th seed. They're in the playoffs. They're good. If they lose and the Lakers beat New Orleans without Zion Williamson, then Portland moves to the 7th seed and the Lakers move to the 6th seed. You understand? The interesting part about this is Denver actually going to play their players? What do I mean by that? Are they going to lose this game on purpose? Right now, the Denver Nuggets are the 3 seed, which means if they win this game, the Lakers will be the 6th seed, which means they have to match up against the Lakers in the first round. They don't want that. Teams are trying to avoid the Lakers in the early rounds. The Clippers just did it. The other night, the Clippers were playing Houston. They set all of their star players. They set their entire starting lineup, and they lost to Houston. Why is that important? Because now the Clippers are the 4 seed, and they have no chance of playing the Lakers in the first round. Now, of course, they'll never tell you they're ducking the Lakers, but we all know that's what it means. It means they would rather play the Lakers down the road instead of in the first round. Makes sense, right? Because if this Lakers team was healthy from start to finish, they would not be a 7th seed. They would not be a 6th seed. So teams clearly do not want to play them in the first round, and rightfully so. So Denver, if they just lose this game to Portland, then they do not have to see the Lakers in the first round. They get to see Portland or Dallas in the first round. So I don't believe that Denver's going to actually play their starters tonight. I believe they will tank this game, which means the Lakers will be in the play-in tournament, which is phenomenal for television ratings and for the NBA, because everyone on Tuesday night is going to be sitting on their couch watching Steph Curry versus LeBron James in a play-in tournament where the winner gets the 7th seed and the loser has to fight for the rest of their lives, fight for their season the next day against the winner of the 9-10. Fascinating, right? Why is it important to me, if I'm a Lakers fan, for the Lakers to get the 7th seed? I think that's what the Lakers want. Because again, I think that they're comfortable winning a play-in game, whether it's against the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Spurs, whoever. I think they believe they will win one of those games, and I agree with them. After they win one of those games, they will then get the Phoenix Suns as a matchup. Why is this important? Phoenix is a good team, but an inexperienced team, a young team. They have Chris Paul, and that's it. No one else on that team has real playoff experience other than Chris Paul. So you're telling me a team in the Suns will be going up against a player who has more playoff experience than 90% of the league combined in the first round, as well as the defending champions, Anthony Davis, I will take the Lakers, and Vegas would take the Lakers. They would be favored. I guarantee you the Lakers would be favored over the Suns. So their first round matchup, while yes, it would be hard, and it would probably go maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 games, the Lakers would win that matchup, all right, in my opinion. So getting the 7th seed is actually not that bad of a situation for the Lakers. I don't find it that bad. Rather than getting the 6th seed and having to play a very good Denver Nuggets team. Even though they're without Jamal Murray, Denver's good. They got Jokic. Michael Porter Jr. has really come on the scene. He has just been a beast this year. He's looking like the number 1 overall pick that many people thought he would have been if he didn't get hurt while playing at Missouri. Remember, Michael Porter Jr. was the clear number 1 pick that year coming out of the draft, but he had back issues, so he slid all the way down to, I think it was like 9 or 10, and the Nuggets picked him, and he's just been phenomenal since. And he's having his best year as an NBA player this year. So, okay, wow, Memphis taking a big comeback here, 97-100. The Warriors are up by 3 with 3 minutes to go. Wow, what a game. So maybe it won't be the Warriors in that 8 seed. It might be Grizzlies, which would be fascinating in itself. But what a game this has been right now. So that's some of the things that I'm looking at if I'm, as a fan here, as a big-time NBA fan. I'm looking at what are the matchups going to be. In the East, we already know what the play-in tournament is. In the East, the Boston Celtics are the 7, the Washington Wizards are the 8, the Indiana Pacers are the 9, and the Charlotte Hornets are the 10. So, on Tuesday, the play-in matchup for the Eastern Conference will be Washington at Boston, and that's another thing that's important. The 7 seed is hosting, and the 9 seed is hosting, right? Because they're the higher seed. So Boston will be hosting Washington for the 7 versus 8, and Indiana will be hosting Charlotte for the 9-10. Those are 2 fun matchups, right? Again, the winner of the 7-8 becomes the 7 seed. The loser plays the 9-10 to become the 8 seed. The Philadelphia 76ers are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Why is that important? There's 3 teams in the East that are the clear favorites in terms of these 3 teams are the teams. If it's whoever's coming out of the East, it's going to be one of these 3 teams. Now, a lot of people believe Miami is a dark horse team that could definitely have a chance to, if they get hot again like they did last year, they could. They definitely could. I don't see that happening. I think they're too banged up. I think everything hit perfect for them last year. I don't see that happening this year. So I'm looking at the 3 teams, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. Okay? Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. Why is it so important and big time for the 76ers that they got the 1 seed? Because now they don't have to see both Brooklyn and Milwaukee. No, they just only have to see 1. The 2 versus the 3 will play each other in the semifinals, right? Brooklyn will get to let those 2 hash it out, Brooklyn versus Milwaukee. Philadelphia will get to let those 2 hash it out and then play the winner. So essentially they get to let those 2 teams beat up on each other, and then they'll just have to play one of them instead of both of them. Brooklyn is going to have to play both Milwaukee and Philadelphia if they want to win the East. Milwaukee is going to have to play both Brooklyn and Philadelphia if they want a chance to win the East. Philadelphia, on the other hand, they just get to play the winner of Brooklyn versus Milwaukee. So that's a big part there. So right now, the Eastern Conference, you got the 76ers, the Nets, the Bucks, the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Heat as the 1 through 6 seed. which that Heat-Bucks matchup in round 1 could be fascinating. And then the 7, Celtics, 8, Wizards, 9, Pacers, 10, Hornets. In the West, you've got the Jazz, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Mavericks, and the Trailblazers as the 1 through 6. The Lakers as the 7, the Warriors as the 8, the Grizzlies as the 9, and the Spurs as the 10. Phenomenal stuff, exciting stuff. This is why I love the play-in tournament. It brings some true jazz to the end of the season. It makes these games towards the end actually meaningful. We're talking about it. We're excited about it. And that is super important in my eyes. Also, I'm a huge NBA fan. I love basketball. Even I can admit the first round of the NBA playoffs is not that great. There's usually 2 matchups that are fun and exciting and go 7 games, and everything else is a blowout. Usually the 4 versus 5 or the 3 versus 6. This gives us something fun in the first round. This gives us an intense winner-take-all game, a couple of them from each conference in the first round. It doesn't make the first round such a snooze fest, right? It jazzes it up a little bit. It makes it more exciting. It's not just Philadelphia versus Orlando every year and the Lakers versus who would it be that's the Spurs lately, as of late. Usually the Spurs are up there, but as of late they've been a lower seed, or it's been the Lakers versus the Trailblazers, which has been fun, but it's not as competitive in the first round. When now, Lakers versus Warriors? Come on, baby. Grizzlies versus Spurs, winner take all, loser packs their bags. That's fun. That's exciting. That's why I love the play-in tournament. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode. I really do appreciate you guys for listening. It means a lot. The GSMC Sports Podcast is brought to you, as you guys know, by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you guys please go and remember to subscribe to the show, write a nice review. It really does help us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you. Have a great night. Have fun watching this Sunday. Have fun watching the NBA and NHL playoffs. We'll be back on Wednesday after the play-in games are over to talk about the real NBA playoffs and what happened with each team in the play-in tournament. Can't wait for that. Have a good early start to your week. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.